And a busy Friday here on Hannity tonight. We are awaiting the first pictures from a Muslim rally right here on American soil in Dearborn, Michigan. Now, they're protesting the trailer that continues to be blamed for all of the violence that has recently swept the Middle East and North Africa. Now, they claim that the filmmaker has blood on his hands. They want to stress the need to curb portrayals of Islam and the Prophet. Now, let me explain what this means. They want to limit your right to freedom of speech. Now, we're going to have a full report and images in just a little bit on the program. And as soon as that video becomes available, we will bring it into you right here on the Fox News channel. But first, new evidence tonight that senior members of the Obama administration, in fact, engaged in a widespread cover-up in the hours immediately following the assassination of 4 Americans in Libya. Now, beyond just their misleading words, it is now their behind-the-scenes actions that are raising very serious questions tonight about what this president and his top aides are trying to hide. Now, according to the Washington Times, a State Department memo has been completely scrubbed from the publicly accessible portion of the agency's website. Now, that document was a September 6th release from the Bureau of Diplomatic Security stating there is no, quote, credible evidence that a terror attack is planned overseas to coincide with the 9/11 anniversary. So what was the motivation for removing that post? Now, first, as we know, the diary of our fallen ambassador, Christopher Stevens, was uncovered at the site of the terrorist attack. And according to CNN, in it, he expressed very serious concerns about his safety. Now, this blatantly contradicts the State Department's now deleted memo. Now, since that discovery, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has gone on record denying having any knowledge of those concerns. For example, remember this.
There is at least one report suggesting that Ambassador Stevens felt that he was on a, quote, al-Qaeda hit list. Is this a scurrilous rumor? Is this gallows humor when one is working in a period of difficulty and great challenge? Or is there something more to what he allegedly, and I stress that word, said?
As to your final question, I have absolutely no information or reason to believe that there's any basis for that.
Now, so despite the fact that our own ambassador, he wrote it in his own diary, we're supposed to believe he never mentioned any of these concerns to his superiors, no emails, no diplomatic cables, nothing. Secretary Clinton also claims that the administration had no information to suggest that our assets in Libya were ever at risk. But in light of the news that this was a premeditated terrorist attack by more than 100 al-Qaeda affiliated operatives, and in light of the fact that it was conducted on the anniversary of the September 11th attacks, how in the world are we to believe that there were no warning signs? Perhaps it's because there was, in fact, warning signs, and they ignored them. It was ignored by a president and a White House that's more interested in winning a second term in office than confronting the threat that is posed by radical Islamists. So maybe that's why all of a sudden the State Department memo has vanished from where the public can see it, because it was quickly becoming apparent that this attack was, in fact, in spite of what they said, coordinated and planned. And memo posted by the State Department saying that al-Qaeda wasn't planning any attacks would show incompetency at the State Department level, and maybe even goes back to the White House. So with this ever-changing story, with every memo we find being deleted, it's obvious they are trying to cover their tracks. Now, even the Washington Times editorial is taking this issue head on. They are writing, quote, this announcement was taken down after recent attacks took place. Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton must explain why this part of the historical record was removed and what other incriminating documents have been deleted or destroyed. Now, the pieces, they're starting to come together tonight, and that's why the State Department went ballistic when the ambassador's journal was found. Maybe that's why they tried to convince you, the American people, that this was all a spontaneous event prompted by a movie trailer on YouTube. And maybe that's why this memo can no longer be accessed by you and I. They have attempted to divert your attention away from the facts, but it has not worked. And tonight on this program, the investigation continues. And joining me with reaction to the latest developments, the author of Suicide of a Superpower, Patrick J. Buchanan. Pat, you know a thing or two about, well, what did they know? When did they know it? And something about a cover-up. One big difference, though. We have 4 dead Americans here. 4. Reaction.
Well, I know something about the White House, too. And let me tell you, the intelligence community knew the day after this event in Benghazi that it was a terrorist attack. Yet 2 days after that, Jay Carney went out and said it was a spontaneous event, a mob came up and all of this. Who was it, Sean, that briefed Carney and told him to go out and say that? In the White House I worked in, that would be the chief of staff and the NSC advisor, because what Carney said was dead false.
All right.
2 days later.
But it's not just Carney, Pat.
It's Susan
Carney,
Rice.
It's Susan Rice. It's Hillary
Clinton. Let's go to Susan Rice. Let's go to Susan Rice. 5 days after this terrorist attack, she is booked on 5 national news shows and goes out and uses the exact terminology: spontaneous, not premeditated, not pre-planned at all. They were told to go out there by people who must have known the intelligence and who therefore were using these people, these administration people, to deceive and to mislead unless they were utterly stupid about what had happened. Now, we ought to find out who told Ms. Rice to go out and say that. Who told Carney to go out and say that? Because we now know it was utterly false. It was completely a terrorist attack, and we're not even sure the so-called Cairo event occurred.
This president still is blaming this YouTube movie trailer that was released in July. He's still blaming them. Now, we have the mother of one of our brave Navy SEALs that was killed here, and she's demanding answers, as should the ambassador's family and the other Navy SEAL and the other person. Benghazi is a hotbed for terrorist training, Pat. This is not brain surgery. What?
Let me tell you about Benghazi. The CIA took off and got out of there the next day. We were told by Susan Rice, the FBI is investigating. The FBI has never gone in to Benghazi. This is 15, 16 days later. That tells you Benghazi is an utterly unsafe city. It's it's Al-Qaedaville, if you will, if the FBI can't even go into that consulate and investigate. Now, here's the overall problem, Sean. Barack Obama is down there saying, we've won the war against Al-Qaeda, or we're winning the war, they're in retreat and all the rest of it. If Al-Qaeda is that strong in Benghazi and the Libyan government can't even deal with this thing, what did we liberate there? Al-Qaeda is now in the Arabian Peninsula. Al-Qaeda is in Syria. Al-Qaeda is in Anbar province. Al-Qaeda is, as I mentioned, is in Libya. It's in Pakistan. In the main one, and Hillary Clinton just referred to it today, take a look at northern Mali. It's the size of France. And the Ansar Dine, which is an affiliate of Al-Qaeda, has taken over the place entirely. She seemed to suggest the attack might have originated in there. Right next door, an American general has been in there. They're talking about a 3,000-man army to invade that area. What's at stake here is Obama's entire Middle East policy and all this, Osama is dead and we're on a roll.
It's even deeper than that. What's at stake here potentially is if there's a cover-up, a conscious cover-up, and as we now have intelligence officers confirming, they knew within 24 hours. But to protect Obama and the beautiful house he lives in that we pay for, the plane that he flies around in that we pay for, the helicopter he flies in, to get reelected, he wants to crawl to the finish line. Senate Democrats today, it's only a show. They're not going to get to, they don't want to get to the bottom of this before Election Day in 39 days. Patrick J. Buchanan?
Sean, let me ask you. That's exactly right. The intel knew it the next day. And yet 2 days later, Carney, and 4 days later, Susan Rice are sent out by whom? Was it Hillary Clinton? Was it the chief of staff in the White House? Was it the head of the NSC? To go out and speak utter, foolish untruths about what occurred. Who told them to do that? Because I don't believe Susan Rice called up 5 networks and said, I'd like to go on Sunday and explain this all to you. Somebody told her to do that.
Doesn't this, now what if, in fact, everything now that we're piecing this all together, number one, they don't want the American people to know that they did not beef up security on the anniversary of 9/11. Number two, that they consciously lied. Number three, that they're now trying to hide and cover the whole thing up. How big an issue, as this relates to the campaign, what do you think we're capable of finding out in the next 39 days? What impact does it have on the election?
I'll tell you what's happening is that Barack Obama's entire Middle East policy built around the Arab Spring and his special relationship because he grew up in Indonesia and the Cairo speech, it is all collapsing right under him. The whole place is on fire with jihadism, anti-Americanism, fundamentalism, and all the rest. And he's saying his policy is weird. The whole American Middle East policy is hanging by a thread right now, Sean.
Let me tell you, Pat, we're going to look back in this period in history with Barack Obama. Oh, I stopped torture. I'm closing Gitmo. I'm sorry. You know, it was embarrassing to watch our president speak at the United Nations, comparing that to Bibi Netanyahu's speech, which was profound, had moral clarity, understood the nature of radical Islamists.
You know what they're trying to do, Sean?
Yes.
They want to get by the election. And if they can get
Crawl
through,
into the finish line.
Exactly. Get all this, get it, bury it, get it aside, you know, get it out of the election, and don't let anything happen. Hopefully keep your fingers crossed till it gets through till November, and then whatever happens then happens. That is the only thing that explains why you would use your officials and destroy their credibility by sending them out and basically making fools of them.
Now, we're going to talk about the cover-up of the cover-up by the mainstream media, which is so in the tank for this guy, coming up later in the program. Patrick Che, good to see you. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.